Get ready to embark on an economic journey as we unveil the heartbeats of the Rwandan business landscapes. This is the Business Age, your front row seat to the economic renaissance of the land of 1,000 hills. Join us as we traverse the bustling markets of Kigali, delve into the success stories of Rwandan entrepreneurs, and explore the dynamic forces shaping the nation's economy. From the boardrooms to the street vendors, we'll bring you the voices of the visionaries and the minds behind Rwanda's economic evolution. Discover the fusion of tradition and technology, witness the agricultural innovations transforming rural communities, and explore the cutting-edge innovations propelling Rwanda into a new era of economic prosperity. From the city lights to the rural landscapes, every business is a story waiting to be told. Hello there. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of The Business Age. Today, we will focus on the micro, small, and medium enterprises. Statistics show us that MSMEs create about 80% of jobs here within Africa, and they contribute about 50% of the GDP. As you can see, they are the heartbeat and the backbone of our economic growth. So today, we'll look at some of the challenges and some of the innovative solutions that are needed to drive up and unlock these opportunities. You'll be with me, Naringwa Fiona Mothoni. Thank you so much, Ms. Auma, for making time to speak to us. We really appreciate and we do look forward to the invaluable insight to be sharing with us today. We'll be looking around the role that MSMEs play within the economic development here in Africa. Could you start by even just painting a picture? How crucial are they when we're talking about economic empowerment, economic development?
African economies are heavily reliant on MSMEs. They're driven by MSMEs. Why are they driven by MSMEs? One, because majority of our businesses are heavily, more than 90% are run by MSMEs. Only 2% are corporates. And you can see the same thing even here in Rwanda. Most people who drive the economy, where we generate a lot of revenue, the sector that creates more jobs is the MSME. Unfortunately, also, if you look at that landscape also, is that most MSMEs are also informal. They're not formalized. And that's why, even though they're generating jobs, but the more jobs they're generating are informal. They're not sustainable, they're not secure. So, and their contribution, currently, if I was to look at Kenya, is they contribute to about 40% of our GDP and close to 90% of all jobs that we have. Like I said earlier, most jobs again are informal. Now, worldwide, MSME contributes to GDP to close to almost 60%. Africa, I know we have that great potential. One, because we have a young population. The demographic dividends arising from the youth bulge is one that we can quickly tap in, because also most of our MSMEs are young people who are creative, who have got innovative mind, and also the women who have resilience. And because of their practices of adapting quickly to new practice and stuff, makes them then become, good practitioners in the sector. So that's an edge that other regions in the world do not have, because you have other regions which are quickly aging, and as we're growing younger by day. So it's a strength that we have over and above. Now, so MSMEs are very critical. We have countries in the world who are doing well. Look at Germany, look at even US, look at India. The economy has been built by MSMEs, is MSME driven. But again, what they have that we don't have is that they've invested so much in enablers, in an ecosystem which is really supportive, which can nurture the MSME growth and development. So what you are lacking in our continent is a deliberate approach that can be able to support MSMEs to move from one level to another, to make sure that we bring down the high informality by making them become more visible. Because again, if they're not visible, how do they get supported? But also in Africa, we have also an advantage because of the tremendous progress we made in technology, especially mobile technology spread. And we can quickly use that, to kind of come up with the solutions, innovative, tech-based solutions that then can support our MSMEs. But even as it is, be as it is in terms of the significance to the economy, they face a myriad of challenges. They are challenged when it comes to access to finance.
We'll actually come to the challenges, but for now, I just want to really understand how much impact they've really had. When you talk about MSMEs, you've even touched it, we're looking at innovation. Yet within the continent, even globally, we have certain sectors that are very traditional, whether it's agriculture. So what particular sectors could you say MSMEs have had the greatest impact?
So if you look at agricultural sector, they are really commanding that sector. Because who are MSMEs? And when you look at the space of MSMEs, you begin from the downstream, which is the production. You begin from your farm. You begin with the smallholder farmer. That's an MSME. Someone who is doing something which can put an economic value to it to earn a living. That's an MSME. You look from there to value addition. Let me take an example of maize meal. From that person who is converting it now into flour, that's an MSME. Then you move from there, you go to the hotel. Somebody who is turning that flour into, in Kenya we call it ugali. I don't know how you call it here. How do you call the maize meal?
It's called kaunga.
Kaunga. Somebody who is, transitioning that in a hotel, the chef who is doing it to kaunga, whoever the proprietor of that hotel, that small hotel, that's an MSME. So you're seeing how they're everywhere. But why agriculture is the biggest space they have is because it's the backbone of our economy. It's within their locality. That's where they live. And MSMEs are very good and are very, because of their flexibility in converting opportunities around them. They don't need to move. Most MSMEs you find who are doing business, they look at the environment in which they reside in. They look at the challenges which are there. And as part of the solution to those challenges, they turn that into business idea. So the MSMEs are opening up areas, are opening up economies in the villages, are helping to grow our village economies, are helping to bring about industrialization in our village. That portion mill owner is part of cottage industry. So they're doing those small scale. Biggest challenge, of course, is scaling up, and scaling up requires certain capacities, including access to finance, the technical know-how, you need networking, you need a guaranteed market, that if you're going to produce this, so it becomes your sustainable source of income. So MSME are everywhere. Okay, let's move to technology. Again, technology sector is another space for them. And the good thing in technology is about how the flexibility of a mindset. And like I say, most MSME players are young people. And young people are known of being creative. And when they're technologically savvy. So you've seen, if you walk around Kigali and you go to cyberspace, who are running those cyberspaces? They're young people. You have young people who develops app, softwares, those are MSMEs. You have young people who are doing repairs, who are technicians for phones, for what? Those are MSMEs. So when you talk about MSME space, again, even in technology, you're not just looking at commodity. We're also looking at services, how you're able to enterprise your skill. You've gone to school, you're a technician, you're an engineer, you are here and there. How do you get to put that, to enterprise that, to earn a living? So, and you see many governments, and more so African governments, and are constantly confronted with the challenge of unemployment. Like I said, we are a young continent. In Kenya, the average Kenyan today is 17 years old. Where is a 17 years old child? A 17 years old kid is still in high school, hasn't even graduated from there to the college. So meaning we have a lot, we need to do a lot of resetting on how to organize economic participation. Now in Kenya, we have a potential workforce of 20 million Kenyans, because we are a population of close to 60 million. So 20 million are almost ready to work, are of consent age, can go there, enter into a contract, have some obligation, be responsible, work, get paid, get sued, they are into the work, into the job market. And every year we have close to 1 million streaming into the job market. But in terms of formal employment, only 3.5 million are formally employed as salaried people. Now living close to 17 million outside there in unsustainable jobs, in informal jobs. They have to fend for themselves, they have to create their own jobs, whether they're sustainable, whether they're chancing. Now, let me give you another shock. Out of the 3.5 million who are formally employed, and it could be even worse when I look at other countries, in the region, only 1 million are in the civil service, are on the government payroll. Are you seeing that? The rest are having jobs in the private sector. Corporates have employed them. So what does that mean? It means we need to put in a lot of effort in the MSME sector, try to formalize jobs, the majority of jobs, those 17 million jobs which are there, and then see how do we then transition them to expand the jobs in the private sector. What we are saying is that the only space that African countries, because of the youth bulge, have to create jobs is to stimulate economic participation at the bottom of the economic pyramid in the informal sector, so that we formalize more MSMEs to start now running competitive businesses, competitive enterprises that can create sustainable jobs for the rest of the population. As we do that, what we'll be doing, once you formalize the sector, you'll also expand the tax bracket. When you expand the tax bracket, you ease the burden at the top of the economic pyramid, where now few people feel as if we are being overtaxed, but now there are no two ways about it. Because these people who are not employed in secure, who do not have secure jobs, they have to be funded. They have to go to hospital, their children needs to go to school, or they need also, and so the few that are actively engaged then have to take care of this. That's why you see now many countries, many people, having a problem, because it can never come down. But now if we stimulate their participation, we will expand the tax bracket. And that's why we usually say MSMEs are critical. They're the only one who can create revenue, increase revenue generation, create revenue into our economy. They're only one who can promote industrialization because of the innovative businesses which they do. They're the only one who can create sustainable jobs, especially if you support them into building competitiveness of their business and enable them grow from one level, from micro to SME, SME to medium, and medium now to the larger enterprises.
Indeed, from everything that you have just said, it's clear that the MSMEs are actually a bridge between the formal and informal economies here, not even Kenya or even Africa, just even globally. Then, what are some of these pressing challenges that are still pending? What is actively being done?
Yes, so many, because now speaking from a duty bearer, from a government perspective, I'll say, first of all, we just have to underscore the urgency needed, especially speaking from our continent, Africa, because the demographic push is so massive. You know, that pressure is just too much. We need to create jobs for agencies. So meaning we need to put more efforts in developing our MSMEs, making sure that they grow. And I'll tell you, one of the ways of doing that is to look at the various barriers that probably hinder their growth. For example, the biggest one being access to sustainable credit and affordable credit. That barrier, we have to pull it down. Because, and then secondly, we have to make sure that we do develop market so that they operate in a space where they have a guaranteed market. We also need to build their capacity to enable them, have capabilities to generate viable business ideas, to enable them understand the ecosystem, all that needs to be done. The financial literacy is very critical. How do they grow their businesses? How do they do the simple accounting and the balance sheets that are usually required in the banks? And then also, we need to make sure also that we support them with networking, and we need to be a bit more deliberate in this. The need to, increase trade financing across the continent, the intra-trade. They need to bring in women and to domesticate the protocol on youth and women on trade. All those, like I said, are MSME. Yes, we can create these opportunities, but accessing them is a different thing. So what do we need to do? Number one, we need to have a conversation around collateral and how governments can then, working closely with the private sector, can come up with a structured and sustainable way of de-risking our MSMEs. First and foremost, we need to debunk the myth that MSMEs are high risk, because that now is a tired story. It has been ongoing on since time immemorial, that if you are a young person, you're seen as if you are not entitled to anything, you own nothing. You see, you're just young, you're still dependent, you don't have. But today, we are proud of our young people. We are saying our young people are our future because of the innovative mindset, because of their, flexibility, because of knowing no boundaries in terms of scope, where they can trade, where they can do, because of the technological savvy. But then, we are not looking at that as an asset. We are not looking at that knowledge, because look where we are today, especially in Africa. One thing that our young people have that probably the rest of the population do not have is that they've gone to school. At least our parents have invested in us, and people have gone to school well. They have skills, they have knowledge, but then that knowledge needs to be seen as an asset. I think. So then we need to start coming up with new system of collateralizing that asset. Because, yes, a young person may not have a title deed. Women may not have title deeds because they don't own properties, they don't own what? Because of also our African system of inheritance and all that. However, why can't we give to them the skills which they have? Because that's the only entitlement. The degree certificate, it's their entitlement. Why can't you put value to that? So you need to have a conversation around there, and it needs to become a responsibility on us to make it happen for the MSMEs, who majority of them are young people, and women to access financing. If it's about defining what risk means, then we need to go back and redefine what we mean by risk. We need to go back and review our collateral system and look at those other assets or other, other variables that can be seen. We can create collaterals or securitize them, so to give these people an opportunity to do what? To access affordable financing and do business. We cannot be singing that the future when we do not want to enable them to start creating that future from today. So much. And then also our African leaders, our African people, men and women who have done well, who are, let's say, the leaders of the private sector, they need to agree to start taking risk. If you care so much about tomorrow, take risk on young people, take risk on women. If you take risk on them, just value their good idea. You've invested in them in education. They're going to school. Let me tell you today, the irony of our economy across the continent, so I told you, because we have young population, the fast growing population, Africa, which is likely in the coming 50 years to form maybe the majority of the world's human capital. And in the coming days, we may not want actually to be exporting tea and to be exporting coffee as our main source of foreign exchange. We may now start to be exporting the knowledge to those human capital to the other continent. And so to educate a young person to reach where a graduate in any discipline, if you were to look at how much investment you make to a child from the time when they are born, you take them to school, early childhood, secondary school, up to the time they graduate, it's a lot of investment. If it's a doctor, we try to do that, to compute that in Kenya, and we realize that it takes close to 7 million Kenyan shillings to educate a doctor up to the point when they graduate and they can go to the hospital and start offering services. But interestingly, you find we have invested so much in our young people, in our population. But that segment of the population that we have invested in so much has no jobs. So there is low returns on our investment, both as a society, as a family, and even as a government.
The partnership is crucial, collaboration between all stakeholders involved. You've touched on it, just looking at some of the initiatives that are in place, whether it's tax incentives, whether it's access to infrastructure, or even that initial opening of the door of telling them, I believe in you, by giving them tenders, by giving them opportunities as well.
Mm-hmm. On market access, like I said, when we start intervening, we intervene to create a conducive environment, but also because it's more like a preparatory phase where you are nurturing, you also come up with some sort of preferential treatment around the MSME sectors. I'll give an example of Kenya. Kenya today, we enacted a policy, an affirmative action policy for women, youth and persons with disability, where 30% of all government procurement are reserved for them. And you know, anywhere in the world, the government is the biggest market, is the biggest consumer. So if you can get that 30%, so you're given every procuring entity is required by law to reserve. And I think there's something that can be adopted also with other governments who have not done that.
MSMEs are the hearts of what the government of Kenya is doing pretty much. As we wrap up, what are the future trends? What should we look out for when you're looking at MSMEs in terms of growth and impact as well?
Well, so we need to focus more on digitalization. We need to digitalize MSME. You remember several years, about really about 4 or 5 years ago when COVID hit us, MSMEs were affected, and the economies of many African countries also was equally affected, because like I said, they're the drivers of our economy. When we came up with the social distance protocols and our MSMEs who do their things in certain physical spaces, so we couldn't go to there, for example, that lady who sells vegetable, the MSME who has a small kiosk making food, those banders and stuff, everything was shut down. And you saw now the larger corporates who owns these chain supermarkets, they started now venturing even in cooked food, because then they had the ability and to run these digital apps like Uber Food, Bolt Food, those kind of, which MSMEs do not have. And I know they have their market. Their market niche is there. Because like for me, I will always want to buy from that mama mboga, the mama who has always been selling for me vegetable. But during that time, I couldn't figure out where she went. But if she was properly digitalized, her enterprise is digitalized, you could quickly just go there and say, I need this amount of mboga, please deliver it. So we need to digitalize them to also cover them from certain shocks in future, which can affect us the way we were affected during. We need to de-risk them. We need to invest more in de-risking mechanism for them. And to take up this opportunity, even the trade financing, to take advantage and exploit and maximize rather the opportunity we have on the continent, maximize on the other free trade agreements we have with other continents like the Asia, the US, the AGOA, and all those opportunities. We need to de-risk them. We need to believe in what they're doing. We need to agree to take some risk and believe in them, so that then we can give them a pathway to a livelihood. Then also we need to build more in capacity building. And the capacity building I'm talking about is not just teaching someone how to do your balance sheet. It's about even making someone start profiling his or her own market. Value addition, knowing how do I create value? How do I reposition my business? How do I expand my market? How do I pitch? How do I know who is my customers? Those kind of things. We need to invest more. And this one, we can even take it back to syllabus. Then also, because we are a young nation with a very high population growth, a young continent rather, we need also to relook at our schooling curriculum and start promoting a culture of entrepreneurship. Because like right now, the kind of unemployment levels that the continent faces is not, you cannot say that is something that we're going to address in the next couple of years. I mean, it's going to get growing and growing, and it can quickly get out of proportion. And the threats that comes with uncertainty, like recently, so what it was in Kenya, the Gen Zs, what if you have skilled young people who are not engaged? So the aftermath, because people want to eat, they're not growing young, they'll also grow old, they need to start setting up their family, so they need to have a secure future. So we need to start making our children know that you will create your own job. So you start coming from primary level, knowing the values and the principles of creating your own job, say saving and investment, knowing how do you save the little money that you get. You need to start introducing them to consumption principles. Do you just have to buy anything? What do you, all those that kind of culture, we need it, because where we are facing, it's everybody will have to venture into that space to earn a living and to have a secure job.
And that wraps up today's episode of The Business Age. As you've heard, MSMEs are crucial. MSMEs are the backbone of our economies, and more needs to be done to unlock their opportunities and to also unlock their potential. Thank you for tuning in. You're with me, Naringwa Fiana Mothoni.